So I started in real estate back in 2005. Real estate was not as crazy as it is right now, I don't think, but it was definitely a crazy time. I had no intention of being a real estate agent. I honestly had intention of investing in real estate. And my brother and I followed in his footsteps. I started college in like fall of 2002. And my brother was in college and him and his friends were starting to get into real estate investing. So I kind of always looked up to my brother over time. He's 4.5 years older than me. We were, closer in age. I was the youngest of the four of us. My sister's the oldest, and I had another brother who's second child. And me and Eric, my brother, who I'm closest with in age, we always hung out, we talked, and I would go up to he went to Drexel, so I would go with his girlfriend to visit him up there and stuff like that. So somebody turned him on to the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad many years ago, around that time frame, and he ended up buying an investment property with a couple buddies of his in Glassboro. They had no idea what the rental regulations were. They didn't know what the heck they were doing. It turns out like you need a certain number of driveway spaces that were like 10 by 10 or something like that, and in order to rent it to certain amount of people for the college. So they thought it was cool to buy a college rental, and then all of a sudden, next thing you know, they're turning around and selling it. Now, thankfully, they each made $1,000 out of it, but it was a very big learning experience for them. At that time, then me and him started to talk about investing in real estate. He was drawing me into that, and we said, well, why don't we go get a real estate license? We were going to some investor group meetings. Then we were like, you know what, let's get our real estate license. So we both got licensed. He was an engineer, then he worked in the financial field, and I was a busboy going through college, right? Working 3-4 days a week, whatever, bussing tables. And then when I got licensed, one of my friends from high school, I started working for her uncle. It was a company called Help You Sell. I don't know, it's not really around anymore. It's a discount broker, kind of like a Redfin, but different concept. They were like a flat fee listing. So it was easy to get inventory then. So they were just banking on the buyer lead. So it was, that's the whole concept of these discount brokers is, you get the listing, which draws the buyers, and then you make your money that way. So I started working for him, and a year and a half into it is when I graduated college. I was more or less just an assistant, and he would throw me buyer leads. And I think I closed like 6 transactions in 2005. It took me like 6 months to get my first one under my belt. And then the next year, midway through the year, when I graduated, I interviewed for the finance degree positions that I had. And I'm like, well, this is all sales. I'm like, so I ended up going, and he offered me salary compensation plus commission structure. So I got to learn under him, which was awesome. It was really good for me to be able to grow as an agent and really learn the process. And for those of you who know the DISC personality assessment, I'm a high S, high C. So I'm very cautious, and I follow rules, and I follow data and things like that. So I'm very much a checklist type person. So I learned the administrative side of the business. Then I remember I had a commission check that I was just like, there's no way. I just sold a $450,000 house and I'm walking away with like $1,000. I'm like, there's just no way. So I got a little disappointed in that. And I said, you know what? Talking to some people at the investor group meetings, I was still going there. And I started interviewing the other companies. And actually, like third or fourth company, I got introduced to Keller Williams. And I was like, okay, this is exactly what I need. It was the education, the training that I was looking for as a young agent. So I ended up hanging my license at the Cherry Hill office from November of 2007 through the summer of 2012, I want to say, before the Washington Township office opened. So I've been with Keller Williams ever since then. One of the first events I went to was business planning clinic before I was even with the company. And it was just amazing, like to still see where I was at that point to where I am today. So that's a little bit of background about, where I got my start. When I left my old brokerage, and I went to Keller Williams, I'll be honest, I had to write I actually had to use a credit card access check to kind of get money in my account, which I only had maybe a couple $1,000 available on the credit card. But I wrote that check and I basically financed my living expenses for a couple of months till I had a closing or two under my belt, to where I was getting, the 64% of it or whatever it was, right? So I ended up having to do that again later that year. And a turning point for me was towards the end of that year, me and my brother were trying to buy rental property. We were buying a duplex in Glassboro. And I ended up meeting an agent her office was closing down. She was looking at other opportunities for different companies. And, we started to become friends and said, yeah, hey, look, why don't you talk to my office and maybe we can work together. If you don't want these expenses on your own, I don't want them. So I don't know if anybody knows Cheryl, now it's Keller, but Cheryl Dare, back then it was Cheryl Daigle. But Cheryl is one of the top agents out of our Washington Township office as well. Her and Tim Kerr are now married and they run a team together. But we worked side by side for about 8 years. That ended in May of 2016. So I didn't just build the team on my own. It organically started to happen as we started to do more business. But one of the key pieces that led me to where I am now was I hired a coach. And honestly, I took a chance. I was so petrified of paying, which at that time was only $295 a month for coaching. One of our old operators, I guess he was one of the owners of the office. He was getting out of the ownership and wanted to get into coaching. And he said, hey, I'll coach you for 90 days for free. If I like it, I'm going to keep on coaching. And if you like it, then we can talk about compensation after that. But I want to see if I like it for 3 months and whatever. Rob and I are still in coaching together. I've actually stepped into, we're building a program called 0 to 60, basically kind of looking at the path of starting fresh to growing an actual business out of it. And it wasn't until I hired him that I realized that I was just kind of flying by the seat of my pants trying to make things happen, right? Before finding Keller Williams, I didn't know what calling expireds was and things like that. I had no idea. I found Keller Williams, I invested my time in the trainings, and I started to learn about that through what is now called Ignite, but it used to be called Camp 443, and then Lead Generation 3612-3. So I started to I went to everything I could get my hands on at that time. I didn't have a lot of clients. I had the free time. I had a girlfriend, but I didn't have kids. I got licensed when I was 20. And when I came to Keller Williams, I was about 23 or 24 years old, I want to say. And then Cheryl and I met and we partnered up business-wise. And then as we started to do our business, we both did about 2 transactions a month. So ever since I've been at Keller Williams, which that first full year of 2008, I did like 19 units and then it was up from there. But I was 19 to 25 units for about 4 years. You're not letting right in, are you?
Mm-hmm. I have to.
Hey, Ray. So I ended up, I was doing about 2 to 3 transactions a month at best. Some months I had none, and I mean, that was nerve-wracking in itself. But when I hired the coach, I started to get a rhythm to it, right? But it took 1 year to 2 years to really build. And in 2011, I remember selling 25 homes. At that time, we had so Cheryl sold about the same. So together we were like 50 unit team. We had a part-time assistant that we were using. That was our first hire. And this is good if anybody has questions about the first hire. Now's a great time to talk about that because that really helped set the bar and the tone for where I'm at now. So I'm gonna pause here to see if does anybody have any questions about your first hire?
What was the one thing that you were looking for in your first hire that you think made the difference?
So when we first hired, we didn't go through Recruit Select course. We didn't go through career visioning, which it's now called. We didn't do any of that. It was just kind of, you know, hey, we need help. We don't feel like uploading our listings. We don't, want to have to do, the posting on Facebook and Facebook wasn't as prominent back then for it. So we actually used to use like Postlets or something like that. So we used to use like different things, Craigslist and all that. So we would take the time to upload. So we're like, all right, let's offload that. Let's see who can do that. So really the key thing was somebody that was not tech savvy, but they knew how to utilize that for us. And they can come in and they could take that off of our plate so that we could focus on, at the time I was very big with consistent lead generation, because that was our job. I mean, that's our job as an agent, is you got to generate leads. Ray, have a question there?
You sure got it.
Yes.
What's up,
Yeah.
buddy?
Hey, Dan. Yeah. So my question would be, how do you determine what that first hire should do? What was it that you determined was most important for them to do to take off your plate to grow the business?
Yep. So where I'm at and where I've always been is I follow the red book. I follow the Millionaire Real Estate Agent. My coaches coach me on that. So I'm very big on hiring. I was very big on hiring that assistant, right? Now, look, we did not follow it to a T by any means. But we kind of piecemealed in what we didn't want to do at the time. We kept the transaction management on our plate, but we offloaded the listing management of putting it into the MLS. I would still do the write-up. I would still take at that time I was taking the photos rather than hiring somebody to take the photos. So I was still doing a lot of the processing, but on the back end, like the marketing and things that were rolling that could get our listing out there quicker and stuff. So I wasn't working at 8, 9 o'clock at night doing it. That was the stuff that I offloaded. And it's so hard to remember, to be honest with you, because it feels like so long ago, which I mean, it kind of is, but that part-time assistant, we went through a couple of them. Because we didn't have our stuff together, we didn't know what we were really doing. We were just piecing it together as we went. And then we found somebody who actually was Cheryl's hairdresser that became a full-time assistant. And then she would cut hair on the side. And Gina, who actually she sells, I think now she's with Weicker Coastal. So Gina now Rhodes, if I'm not mistaken, she was our assistant that really became full-time. She really ended up taking a lot more off of our plate transactionally. And at that time we were doing more transactions. So it did become a little bit harder to get through the day and handle everything. So the key thing is there are job descriptions that the MREA has laid out for us. Not that your position is going to hit every one of those job details, but it's why reinvent the wheel? Like that's my thing is why would you reinvent the wheel at that time? There's already a model out there. And if you believe in that model and it works for you, like it has for me over time, try to follow it as best as you can. There's plenty of things of supplemental downloads and resources that you can go to now, especially everything's at the click of our fingertip there. So that's, to me, I just, in the coaching as well, it was about, I wanted to focus on my 20%. Lead generation, lead follow-up, going on appointments, negotiating contracts, and educating and self-development. That was the 5 things that, if you ever take them bold, they're the 5 things that they teach you. And my coach, thankfully, was on me about that. So that's what we focused on. And it was, Dan, get all the other stuff off your plate. if anybody has seen my business over time or heard me talk, I don't invest a lot of money in marketing. I don't put that out there. It became very much so. I focused on the database. I had somebody on the back end doing a lot of that extra work that I needed to offload, the paperwork and the processing and all that and the compliance stuff. And my job was going out and going to the appointments. And this is kind of where Cheryl and I started to have some challenges, because I stayed in the coaching at that time. She did not. And she just didn't feel like it was the right coach for her, but she became very operational. So she wanted the operations side of the business to be on point. She would train the assistant, she would put the time there, and I wouldn't. Not fair to her, but also was never discussed with us. So it was something that, you know, led ultimately not having the business set up as a business from day one. That is something that stopped our team, and we decided, you know what, it's best to part ways. And that happened in 2016. That was May, actually like the end of April. So May of 2016 is when I officially was the Mauz group, where I was the only person there. And I inherited a lot of, her and an assistant went their way, and I inherited 2 buyer's agents, another buyer's agent coming on board, an ISA, a new assistant, and then an assistant that was leaving us. Actually, she had just told us that she was going to be parting ways. And I had to refocus, and I had no idea what I was going to do, you know. So you had a comment earlier about things that you would do different. One thing that I would absolutely do different is I would, well, 2 things. I would read the MREA. For about 3 years, that book sat on my brother's desk, and we both, when we first got licensed, he bought a book, I bought a book. I couldn't, mine was like the field guide to success in real estate. I never even picked it up. He had the red book. Till I met with KW office, I had no idea that that book was sitting right on our desk. And I'm like, I should have read that a long time ago. Second is I should have treated it like a business from day one. It's a lot harder to work backwards, and I've had to do that quite often. I've gotten some things on track, but it's a lot harder when people have an expectation or they're used to the way something is, and then you have to go back and change it. Whether it's commission splits as a team owner, whether it's who does what and job roles, it definitely becomes a little bit of a challenge. So that first hire, and going back to that conversation, that first hire is a very critical hire. They always use the concept of slow to hire, fast to fire. I find that I'm slow to fire as well because of my personality. So you have, that's why I said, if you treat it like a business from day one, then that's your expectation, and you have to be very on top of what you expect. So it's the inspect what you expect rule. So fast forwarding to 2016, I knew that I needed more help. So I kind of had to reinvent my team, and I had to figure things out. So I ended up letting go of a few people. They self-determined that. I didn't necessarily let them go. They chose to go. There was a lot of dysfunction at the time. And then I hired an assistant who was more or less a transaction manager, because at that time, my business went from 2011, I did 25 units. This is just me personally. 2012, I did 54. So my success was always gradual, then sudden. All right. So if anybody's follows Darren Hardy, he has a book called The Compound Effect. I highly advise reading that, because it's about your habits will compound on themselves, right? So that's where that growth took off. And then for another 2 years, I was like 60, 66 units. And then I went to 108 units. I ended 2015 with 108 units. So I kept on focusing on the business, whereas Cheryl at the time as the partner was focusing on the operational side. That led to a big dysfunction, because I was getting paid to do my job, which was sales. We didn't split everything 50-50, but then once we tried to split it 50-50, that's when that dysfunction went. And that's when we realized that it wasn't right. So I needed help right away. I mean, I was doing over 100 transactions at the time. At that time, we had a showing agent, and we ended up bringing on a few buyers agents. So my team growth was me as an agent, growing my client database so much that I could not handle it, right? So I think they say it's about 36 to 40 transactions before you make your first hire, which is the assistant. So what a lot of people do is they end up hiring a buyer's agent because they don't want to run buyers anymore. But what good are you to a buyer's agent if you don't have systems in place to run the business? Which is why if you look at the MRA model, your first two hires are an executive assistant and a transaction manager. So you need that support. There has to be a value as a team owner for your team members. The reason that we start to grow is, and you bring on that buyer's agent first, is because you feel you have too many leads and you just can't handle that. But that's not the case. It's that you don't have the time because you're focusing your time on the 80%. So when you hire the buyer's agent, that's because you're focusing your time on 80%, which is the paperwork, preparing, getting your marketing out there, things like that, right? You don't need to be the one to do that. You got to do what you're good at, which is sales. And I always build it because I just had that need of, I had too much on my plate. I had too many people that I can't take care of them all, right? So we ended up hiring a buyer's agent after we had two assistants in place, and we had what happened first was a showing agent. We brought on someone to help us with showings, and then we thought the natural progression for that person was, oh, well, put them in a buyer's agent role. They were a completely wrong fit for the buyer's agent role. Honestly, she was a awful fit for the buyer's agent role for us, and then we ended up bringing on someone else, and when we brought on somebody else, you could see that dysfunction came, and she wasn't happy. Whoa, I thought I was your lead buyer's agent. Well, no, that's an earned thing. And we would throw titles out there and then realize, okay, you can't do that. But when we brought somebody else in for the competitive nature of it, like that was there, she ended up leaving the team pretty much immediately because, I guess she didn't feel like it was worth it. And the buyer's agent that came on board, she spoke here a couple of times. She's no longer KW. She was with Jeff Quinton for a little bit, but then she went to EXP. Mary Murphy, she was solid agent. I mean, absolutely solid agent, but I'm a very relational type person. A lot of the people I know that I work with, that buyer's agent was not. So it actually lost clientele for me, which was tough. But Mary came in, she came in March to our business. Her first sale, she had one sale in April, nothing again until like late June or July, and she closed 36 units that year. So, she hustled, she really hustled. And that was a great fit. But what happened was Mary was a big thinker, and Mary had a big vision for herself. And this is why I said I would treat it like a business from day one, because so when Cheryl and I parted ways, Mary stayed with me. And about a year later, Mary was gone from me because my vision and my world wasn't big enough to keep her world in there. Now, I know she wasn't the right fit for my company, but she was definitely a great agent. She just always wanted to be the one doing it as I was as the leader and the owner of it, right? So I think all along, a team was just a stepping stone, which is fine because I had a stepping stone when I first started. But I did not know the hiring game at that time. So I didn't see these cues, right? So maybe I would have never hired Mary because I would have seen something. But regardless, that's the path that I took. That's the path that I was dealt, and doing the best that I could to correct from there, right? So right now, my team looks like this. I have an operations manager who handles, her duties is handling all the administrative admins. She is in charge of hiring, firing, and working on the whole operation side of the business. The back end, that support, that value and transaction management and listing management. We have a listing manager. So anytime we have an appointment coming up, she gets us ready for it. When we take a listing, we turn the file into her. She schedules photos. She handles getting it onto the MLS and doing all that marketing there, wherever else it goes. And in my business, because I've grown it because of my needs first, which is something that, again, if I was looking at it from a business perspective, I might have done differently. She will filter some agent calls. And she has in the past negotiated many offers to where I'd be coming in from an appointment and I'd see an email to our transaction manager, hey, please prepare a contract on this. And I'm like, that's pretty cool, and it was truly just, I had a great administrative staff that helped me as a sales agent. We have a transaction manager. We actually had two. We had one for listings, one for buyers. Buyer sales were down, are down significantly this year. Last year we closed 274 transactions. 114 of those were buyers. This year, I think we might be at like 70 buyers. So it's definitely very challenging. So our buyer transaction manager actually just parted ways with us. Yesterday was her last day. So our listing transaction manager, Brooke, is going to take on everything. And until we feel that Brooke is at her capacity of about 50 transactions consistently that she's managing, once she gets to that point, she's going to have most likely a virtual assistant that can help with compliance type scenarios where turning things into the office and doing just the tedious time consuming tasks that she doesn't need to be the one doing. So again, it's keeping her working in the 20% of that role, right? That's the theme is you need, whoever you're hiring should be keeping you in your 20%. And then whoever you hire for them, you got to keep them in their 20%, right? So we also have our former transaction manager, Rebecca, is doing marketing for us. So I look at that as a temporary role for her because she's actually on the sales side as well. And she's been a listing partner of mine for my personal book of business. So on the sales side of things, I'm the lead listing agent. However, like I said, I'm actually transitioning out of that. So Rebecca has been taking on the majority of the leads and the listing consultations. I'm still involved, but at a much lesser scale. And I have second helper there would be Greg. Now, I also have, I can't call them buyer's agents because everybody on my team can take listings. So, I don't take that away from them. I have, I count this out. 6 agents, not including Rebecca. So that's 7 agents, including Rebecca. 8 would be myself. So I have 8 agents. Here's the challenge. Of that 274 units, I probably did about 135 of them, plus what I obviously fed to the team as a lead generator through my database and things like that. So that's where I look at it as, oh man, this is gonna be hard to step away from because I do so much. That's gonna be a big hit income wise, but if I don't take the step back, I'll never push forward. And that's the key thing there. But I have coaches that are helping me through this process. And I can't stress enough how important coaches are in this process with you. So we also have going on this year to hire an ISA team. Right now we have 1 full-time ISA. For those of you who don't know what an ISA is, it's like a telemarketer. So basically they're pounding the phone to, they're cold calling, or they're accepting the incoming leads and they're qualifying and setting appointments to tee it up for the listing specialist or the buyer's agents. So I have 1 full-time ISA, and then we have a second part-time ISA that just came on board. I'm seeing okay results there. I'm not seeing, tremendous results, But I figure this is about a year-long process because they're brand new to real estate. And I don't know really if there was a true expectation or a goal that we really had set forth for ourselves. Again, I'm not perfect with it. I'm growing through it. I'm failing forward. We learn from our mistakes. I don't want to make the same mistake twice. But what I have realized is I'm actually not working in the roles that I should be in, which is director of sales and the director of lead generation. So if you look at the KW model, you have your CEO, and then you have your director of lead generation, your director of operations, and your director of sales. So under them, they're the managers of the sales division, the operations department, and the lead generation division. I'm doing a crappy job of keeping the lead generation and the sales side accountable. So that's why with me leveraging the listings and not working with buyers, I'm able to put that time there to hold them accountable for what I know needs to be done.
There was a question in the
Yeah.
chat. Did you use a company to hire the ISA or did you hire them individually?
So the ISA kind of fell into my lap. I will say that in the past, Cheryl and I did use my Outdesk, which was a virtual assistant company. So we did have somebody who was from the Philippines that was making calls. I like it to be in-house. I think it's a little bit easier to manage. So I had a friend of mine reach out to me who was my brother-in-law's friend who was a past client of mine, shot me a screenshot of somebody's ad on Indeed. And it was a former KW agent that put it out there, Kristen Holloway. And she's now with Compass. And it was about the internal sales agent. And he's like, yo, can I really make this money like doing this job? And I'm like, it's got to be commission based, whatever. I'm like, but if you're looking there, why don't we talk? Because, I might have an opportunity for you. So trust me, I've taken career visioning probably 5 to 10 times. I've taken every course probably 5 to 10 times. I never stop going because I know I'm always going to get something different out of it, but that is one of the key things I think that has helped me succeed to where I am, is because I've always put my time and energy into educating myself and growing there. So I could have used an outside company. I chose not to for that one. Yes, it takes us away from some of the other things that we need to do. So if there is a good company out there and you have it in your budget, absolutely leverage it. But we are having the ISA coached. Our former team leader, Andrea Ferry, actually has an ISA company basically, or coaching ISA company. So he is in coach. So I've leveraged that. Coaching, as I've said it a million times, that's one of the most important things to me. So we have leveraged that. I'm going to be taking them on and not one-on-one, but I'm going to do group coaching with the ISAs because I'm not seeing that they're qualifying, and I want them to understand it's a numbers game a little bit better. So maybe get a little bit more strict with that because I don't know that what they're being taught is fully the way that it needs to be done. Obviously, I've cold called, I've done it all. Andrea has not. She cold called as a team leader, but she didn't sell real estate. So to a certain extent, she doesn't get it fully, right? To where I understand it because that's what I've done for 16 years, right? So no, I have not leveraged the hiring process there, but I would if I had the opportunity. And it's got to make financial sense.
Absolutely.
Are there any other? I see there's a couple things in the chat. Is there any other questions in there?
Yeah. Putting some notes in there. Do you like promote within your team?
Yeah, so that's actually, I'm really glad you brought that up because I was talking to an agent a while back and we were talking about the director of sales role. And he's now actually like the team leader or GM of our offices that John Clady owns. But I thought to myself, and I'm talking to him, he was at Compass at the time, and we were talking, and then I thought, I'm like, you know what? I should be promoting from within. That could really raise some it could make people disgruntled, you know, if you're not providing opportunity, why are they gonna stay with you?
Yeah.
So I have thought more about that. Now what I haven't built out yet, and we are working on it, is how do you get there, right? So how do you promote from within? You don't just all of a sudden get put in that role. Like, no, you have to earn it basically. So how do you earn it? And I have some thoughts about, you know, people, and I'm actually, just the other day, we went through, as we're preparing for 2022, which really starts today, guys. Your year for next year really is starting today. You know, what you do today will show up 90 days from now. So we sat there and I said, you know what, let me draw the organizational map. And I said, you know, the CEO, that's me. All right, then I don't want to be the one that the director of operations and the director of sales and director of lead gen fully report to. So we need a chief operating officer eventually. We need a CFO. We need somebody who's in the recruiting and the HR, really. So the growth officer, right? And I've learned all this by going through a lot of these classes. So we mapped that out. And then we went a level down. Director of sales, director of lead gen, director of operations. And then we went down from there. ISAs, admins, agents. Now that I'm putting it out there, it feels good to see that, like, okay, I didn't have a vision for a long time, right? I mean, I still don't know if I have a clear vision of what I truly want to do, but I'm getting there. And I'm always growing that big why, as they talk about, and I'm always figuring that out. It's a work in progress for me. But as I see it, I see them creating a vision of a roadmap for them. And I think that that's really valuable to some people, and other people, they're okay where they are. They don't want that, right? But if you have someone who is, you know, I have Greg on my team who's really, really killing it this year. And he's been really, he's come a long way. I mean, I thought he had like 4 or 5 months dry 2 years in a row. And I really thought, man, how is he staying in this? But he stuck it out, and now he's actually closed over 10 million in volume this year. And he's only been in real estate 3-4 years. So it's been awesome. And to see that growth there. So I could see someone like him, he could eventually outgrow the team if I don't have this opportunity available for him, right? So he's somebody I think about promoting from within. That if I see the right things in him and I really build this out to say, this is what it needs to look like in order for you to earn this, and this is what it would look like to earn this role, compensation wise, things like that. Like, I could see him being a director of sales and coaching and leading the agents, and still selling, right? If he wants to sell. So yeah, that is very critical in all of this, is knowing where you want to get to and how somebody can earn a role for you so that you can promote from within. But I think that's a really important piece to it, is promoting from within.
Did your brother ever join the KW?
Now, you know, my brother's an idiot. He and I say that because he let his referral license lapse.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I don't get how, but he just wasn't on top of it, and they did not reach out enough to say, hey, your license is going to expire if you don't renew it.
Yeah.
He never realized it. His license expired. So for the first couple of years, we like kind of split commissions, and I don't know why. I can't remember why, honestly. He was working full time. I was handling. So if he had a client, we would like split things rather than, and I would run it. So it was like our lone little team thing. But he got into the financial world, and actually now he helps real estate investors and business owners obtain unsecured money, basically, in the form of business credit cards, small business loans. He has a lot of contacts. So if you have real estate investors that they're like, hey, I would love to get into a deal, but I need capital, he's the guy to talk to. He's not a mortgage lender. He's nothing like that. His company is called MB Capital Solutions. His name's Eric. So MB is Mauz Brothers. We had a company already named that, so he just took it and ran with it. But I have nothing to do with that company. I should, though, for the name. I know I talked a heck of a lot about things. I want to make sure that everybody is getting value. Can Anybody think of anything that we did not discuss today about the team up to this point? Or any questions that maybe you have in your mind that came up during this that I haven't talked about?
I like the whole idea behind like drawing out like the organizational chart. Like even if
Yeah.
it's not, even if not all the spots are filled right
Absolutely,
now.
well, because you're filling those spots.
Exactly.
So I'm a director of lead generation and a director of sales. I don't want to be that. You know, that's hard for me.
That's
Like
not
honestly, director of lead gen, so, or director of sales, what I'm gonna start doing as of Monday is so every Monday now, I'm gonna take 30 minutes and coach this 7 agents that I have on my team. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna go over their 411. We're going to go over their numbers. We use a program called Sisu to track our numbers. I've always used spreadsheets too. You don't need anything special to track your numbers. Your numbers are those darn things right there on the board. You know, I mean, it's that simple. So I track the numbers through there so that we're always on top of that. Because look, the numbers are the lifeline of any business. And it's really important to know where your numbers are so that you know what you need to hit, right? And then we're going to talk about their pipeline in a 30-minute meeting and be very specific. I told them, and it's really hard for me to do this, but I have to hold true to it, is if they don't have that stuff over to me 24 hours before that call, there's no call. So we're upping the ante with the accountability. My goal is to either coach you up or coach you out of the business, because I know that a guy like Greg wants more productivity driven agents and team members around him, because look, I'm top team at the office, right? Tom Duffy is second, John Clayton's team is up there, but I don't, unless I go outside of the office, there's no one to really mirror or learn from there, right? To an
Yeah.
extent. They're bringing in a $75 million team. I think they actually are transitioning to our office this week. So kind of got my juices going a little bit, because before it was kind of, you know, you're content, you're doing well, I'm growing my business. Not that I compare myself to it, but now it's going to put a little bit of competition. I mean, we all want to win.
Yeah.
You know, we all want to be the best. I've never been driven to be the #1 agent or the #1 team. I just do what I do because it's what I'm supposed to do, and that's that. And that's just been me. As my coach is like, hey, you got to make 20 contacts a day. You got to do this. There were days where I didn't work, or I didn't make the contacts. I just saw the question, what does my day look like? Right now, my day is, I should be contacting my VIP database, but honestly, I haven't worked on it. And I don't have that person other than my coaches that are like on me about it, right? So as a group, my team should be holding each other accountable. So I want to start by leading the way there, right? Leadership is action and example. And, that's something that, I'm probably getting the results that are warranted for the way that I've been leading. It's a hard truth to it. So me as a director of sales, my job is to make sure this sales team is hitting their goals. Now, if somebody wants to sell 12 houses a year, then hey, you want to sell 12 houses a year, let's build your goals around it. But as a team owner, you have to realize when a lower goal becomes something that hurts your business, right? You don't just want to take on anybody. And I got a lot of people that say, hey, I'm getting into real estate, but they're like dual career. I know how hard it is. And I know that nights and weekends I don't have available. So somebody who's dual career, I probably need to figure out a way to leverage our productivity coaching program. So my day-to-day right now, every day we are on a team. I have a team Google Hangout set up for script practice. So we do script practice between 8:30 and 9 o'clock. And then I get my day started, and I either have, like, Mondays is all meetings now. I meet with Marie, my director of operations, for 30 minutes. I meet with our listing and pending coordinators for 30 minutes, make sure, because I'm still have my own sales. So I want to make sure that I'm up to date on everything and we know what's happening. Communication there is very critical. And then I get about an hour break to get to, I laugh because it's so ancient, but I still use Top Producer, which is a contact management system. I've not switched over to Command. I don't like the change. I don't want to change, so I'm fighting that. So I use Top Producer to keep track of my calls, my to-dos, but it's also like transaction and listing management in there too. So I have tasks to touch base with my clients and things like that. Communication is absolutely critical throughout, no matter what it is. So I'll go through some of that, and then I'm going to go into meetings from 11 to 12:30. I get another hour break, and then 1:30 to 3:30, I'm in those meetings again. And then after that, I'm going to, finish out my day, close my day, and I'm not going to take appointments that day. But Tuesday, what I have is the 8:30, and then I have 9 to 12 block for, lead generation. But as I'm shifting, it should be me calling the database and then probably handling follow-ups and things like that. 12 to 1 is available if I want to take any lunch appointment. 1 to 2 is available for me to do email, voicemails, and just general tasks. And then since I am still in the sales role, 2:30 to 3:30 is an appointment slot, and 4 o'clock to 5 o'clock is an appointment slot, and then I'm done. Not every day goes perfect like that, but that day mirrors pretty much the rest of the week. Fridays, I don't like, I'm going to try not to take any appointments in the afternoon. Or if I do, I don't want to take them after 4 o'clock. Every first Wednesday, we have a team meeting. And then when I don't have the team meeting, it's just that available for lunch block. And then Thursdays, I do a mastermind from 12 to 1 every Thursday with my brother and 2 other guys. So as you can see, I am extremely regimented on a schedule. It's kind of boring, but repetition boredom is what you need to become okay with in order to have those compounding results. So I know what I'm supposed to be doing every day. Whether I'm doing it or not is a different story, but I'm still moving the business forward, and some of those appointments that my appointment slots might turn into a recruiting appointment slot, right? Rather than a listing appointment, because now I have a listing partner and I say, hey, awesome, my listing specialist is going to come out and she'll meet with you. It's new to me. I'm still going to transition with that a little bit. There's some people that I've been in touch with for quite some time that I do feel obligated to take that listing on. But I also know that I have the support on the back end that can take on a lot of the, the work that I don't need to be doing as an agent, right? But ultimately, I want to be able to step out completely. And hopefully that's by the end of this year. Any other questions? Thoughts, observations?
No, I think we're all good.
Do we have anyone? Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I appreciate you coming on. Appreciate you coming down to the Northfield office. I didn't know you'd be in the office today. I missed that memo. Otherwise, I would have swung by. But definitely appreciate you taking your time out. Learned a lot. And I mean, you're always a rock star, and I love sending my clients to your team over there.
Oh, stop! You guys sell in my area now.
Hey man, I gave Greg that.
No,
Cherry
fine.
Hill.
You're the
I gave
best,
Greg
thank
that
you.
Cherry Hill lead. You remember that.
Oh, I know, I do. Don't worry, I remember that. I just
But yeah,
breaking.
I do come in your area. You're right.
I saw it. Don't worry, I told some more. Don't watch out. So in closing, I think, look, what I've done in my business has been constantly learn. And the education is so important that I'm learning to become a business owner. I'm learning to become a leader. Like one of the things I want to do now is get a leadership course that Darren Hardy has in my calendar every day, right? Even if it's 30 minutes, because I know that I lack in certain areas that I want to build muscle with, right? I can go on a listing appointment. I don't have a can listing presentation. I don't like I know you guys have Josh Bear coming here next week or whatever. Josh and I, we run together in the mornings with Mike Lentz, and we talk a lot, and they, my business became very relationship driven with database and referrals. And I always called the expires, I called the FISBOs. I didn't get a lot out of it, but what happened was it was a law of attraction. It was, I was putting that energy out there, I was doing those things, and I was getting good things coming back to me. And it was a lot through follow-up. I remember one of the most important things that was said to me many years ago was 70% of our business comes from lead follow-up. And that's true, because think about your database. That's all you're doing is following up with them. Hey, how you doing? How you been? Anything I can do for you? I would make a call a quarter to my database, and some people hated it. They were like, oh my God, why is this guy calling me? And then some people were receptive to it. The cool thing is, once you get to grow your business, you don't care about the people that don't want to do business with you, because you want to do business with people that you like and that trust you, right? And I tend to be a yes person. So I'm in a position where I'm like, now as a third party, as the leader, I tell my team, like, look, get rid of them then. Like, you don't need the drama. You don't need that, right? Feel free to walk away from it, because honestly, I know the value that we bring to the table. And if they can't see that value, or they're not going to treat us with that respect, then we don't want them as a client, and it's okay. Because I've brought in a lot of crap clients, and I mean, the admins take they can, I don't know what it is, but they can take a beating verbally from people. There's nothing worse than, you're in the office and your admin, comes down crying after a conversation because they were just so mean. But then I get on the phone with them and it's like, yeah, Dan, so, everything's fine. But I'm like, how were you just this way with my assistant, which I know about, but yet you come and talk to me and everything's fine. It's bizarre, but treat your employees well enough so that they never want to leave you. Train them well enough so they could. This is a Richard Branson quote that I have on my desk. Train them well enough so they can leave you. Treat them well enough so they never feel the need to. And that's kind of me in a nutshell. It's like, I really want my team members to grow. I don't want them working all hours of the night. I want my admins to enjoy their time out of the office. I have very committed people that do work after hours, and I appreciate it. And I try to take care of them. And we put structures in place we put a profit share system in place for the admins last year. We're looking to do that for the agents moving forward. I learned a lot from, I don't know if you guys know George Kelly. I learned a lot from him. We talk a lot about things. There's definitely things that I could be doing different that I'm evolving over time. But our business is ultimately based on systems and models. It's the MRA model. If we don't have those systems rocking and rolling, then there's not going to be value for people to join our organization. But treat it, even if you're a solo agent, treat it like a business from day one. The organizational chart is there in MRA. I didn't create it. I'm just trying to follow and map it out. But there is with MRA 2, there is a different set of 7th level organization charts. And it includes showing agent, it includes expansion. But it really gets you thinking as to what you can really do with the business. And one other thing I think you have to do is pay yourself as the business owner, but also pay yourself as the salesperson and for your role, so that as you grow and you replace yourself in that role, then you already know financially what that means to your business. And I never did that. And we've then put in there, okay, well, for Dan's listing side of the business, if we paid a listing specialist 25%, what would that look like? Right? So paying Dan as a listing specialist 25%. Wow, last year they could have made $150,000. That's a damn good living to just come in and get the listings, right? But they have to be skilled. You have to have the right person. And thankfully with Rebecca, I know that I have a really solid person there, because I hear her talk. She's come on me with appointments. I listen to her as she's on the phone or as she's explaining something about the way the appointment went. and she can talk the language I talk. And that's huge for me, because it's hard for me to let go of that when I know that a lot of my business comes from the database. Sorry, I know I talk a lot. So
Totally fine.
I hope that you guys got value out of this. I mentioned a couple books. The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy, highly recommend. Rich Dad, Poor Dad helps you get in the investor mindset. The One Thing, MREA. And there's one more book called The 12-Week Year. It's about chunking a yearly goal into 12 weeks, so quarterly or even monthly, right? Even if you did it monthly, just think about how much more productive you could actually be in hitting your goals. You're like, all right, this month I just want to do this, and you set out to do that. And then the next month you do the same, and then eventually you're gonna get to the end of the year like, wow, look at my numbers. And that's really all that I was doing, was I was tracking my numbers. I was making sure that I was hitting numbers. I was calling my database. I was going on appointments. And eventually it was like, man, I can't do this all. I need help doing it. And boom, there you go, growing a team. So build it like a business from the start, and you won't have the struggles that I have.
Sounds like a plan. Well, if nobody has anything else that they want to ask, Dan, I just want to thank you for your time.
Absolutely, anytime.
And I put your contact info in the box, so if anybody wants to reach out for referrals and or questions, they surely can.
Cool. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Get better soon.
Hey, was that the 12-week work year? Was that
Well, the 12-week year.
by Brian Morgan?
Yeah, Brian Moran.
Brian Moran.
Yep.
Excellent. I'm ordering it right now. Thank you. Appreciate
Cool.
it.
Absolutely.
Take care, guys.